All right, guys, settle down. Everybody, seats, places, please. Got another video here today. A bulking video, the counterpart to my cutting video from last week, right? So, cutting when you're losing weight, right? Bulking, trying to gain some weight here, all right? So we're gonna go through that, talk about who should do it, when they should do it, how they should do it. Let's get right into it, all right? So, who should bulk? When to bulk? All right, under the umbrella, once again, of regular MFs. Regular people, so I'm not talking about strong men trying to eat 8,000 calorie breakfasts with fucking 12 eggs and 8 slices of bacon and all this other crap. And we're not talking about, what's another scenario? Like moving up to a weight class, you know? I'm not talking about powerlifters trying to fill out a weight class or anything like that. Although that kind of falls into one of the categories I'm going to talk about. But basically, regular people, right? There are two main types of people that should bulk, gain weight, right? And those are the novice, so someone that's totally untrained, right, most of the time, and the advanced, someone who is reasonably trained, right? So let's go through the scenarios a little deeper, right? So the novice, all right? We have someone that is, I'll throw out a few different archetypes, right? So you have a super duper skinny underweight male. Think he's gonna have to gain weight? You're dead right, he's gonna have to gain weight. All right, obviously that's the biggest one, that's most common. What if the lines are a bit more blurred? What if it's like a guy who is kind of like skinny fat, right? He's like, I gave this example in the last video. He's like 5'7", he's 160, he's really soft. He's like 25% body fat, maybe 30. You know, he's a little just untrained and like totally soft. That guy also should gain weight, right? He's probably going to gain not as much weight as the skinny underweight guy, right? The guy that's 5'7" and 130 is probably going to gain, 50 to 70 pounds. But the guy that is 5'7" and 160, maybe he'll only gain like 20, 30, 40 pounds, something like that, It's a little bit less, but he's still going to have to gain weight in order to get stronger and maximize his progress, right? Let's think of another one. What about a guy who is 5'7" and 220? Probably not going to have to gain any weight. He's a little fluffy, He's a little overweight if he's untrained. And so that guy doesn't have to gain any weight, right? He can just kind of hang out where he is for the most part. All right, and then the advanced category. So this is a guy that has been, there's a couple different ways that you could look at this. So let's say the guy's been training for a long period of time. He went through his whole novice arc. He gained weight. Let's say he was like, relatively skinny to start with, and then he got up to 20% body fat at the end of like his, novice and early intermediate phase. Also, I tacked this on novice into early intermediate because I really kind of view like the running it out once a week phase as like an extension of the NLP, because it also, kind of same principles sort of apply. It's not that much different. But anyways, so early intermediate novice phase, you're gaining weight. So the guy that's, 20% body fat at the end of that, maybe he stayed at that same body weight for a couple of years or something like that, kept getting stronger, and then he kept leaning out at that body weight. And now he's kind of at a point where his recovery is not as good. He might be 15%, it might be 13% body fat, it might be 10%. Doesn't matter. But the point is he's getting lean enough that now, in order for him to get stronger, he's going to have to put on a little bit more body fat, believe it or not, where he's still going to look good, he's still going to be healthy, but that extra body fat's going to help him recover, it's going to help him perform a little better, feel a little better. Right, so that guy is going to gain weight, and that's going to happen in a different sort of way, as I'm going to talk about in the next section, right? But let's get into that, all right? So we got the calorie surplus, right? How much of a calorie surplus do we want? And I put that there as kind of a gotcha, kind of a trick, right? So I don't think a calorie surplus is a very good way to look at it at all as a novice lifter, right? Because you're just getting into training. You got to focus on that. You have no freaking idea how much you're eating. You have no freaking idea how much protein you're eating. You have no idea what your maintenance calories are. And on top of that, because you're gaining weight at a fast rate and you're changing your body composition rapidly, your daily caloric requirements are shifting like by the day and by the week, right? So there's just no sense in trying to like, you can use like a calculator to try to find a baseline and kind of start there, but like, I find it's just much more productive to not even worry about that and just look at scale weight if you're starting out as a novice, right? So how much weight should you gain is a better question for the novice. So if you're starting out, like I said, the really skinny guy, 5'7", 130, and you're trying to get your body weight up to 180 as fast as possible, right? Your best option is to gain as much weight as you physically can at the start, really. So like, you want to get to, if you're starting out at 130, you want to be 150 like within the first month, preferably. You just want to hammer calories. You want ice cream, bananas. Depends on how old you are too, but like, because there are pretty skinny older guys that come into the gym, but like, if you're under the age of 40 and you're that skinny, you just need to like hammer the food, hammer the calories, get your body weight up as fast as possible. All right. So the best way to do that is to eat lots of calorie dense foods, right? I think so. Calorie dense means that the food is dense with calories, right? Okay, so that's what we want, like peanut butter and ice cream and those sorts of foods. Lots of peanut butter, lots of ice cream, that sort of thing. Foods that are easy to eat. Rice is a good one. Milk, of course, the gallon of milk a day. That's going to benefit that person a lot. Sometimes a gallon of milk a day is not extreme enough. You need ice cream. There's like the Andrew Lewis protein shake video. Very helpful. Big fan of that one, where you make this shake with like oats and ice cream and olive oil and all this stuff. So some guys need that, believe it or not. I can't fathom that, but a lot of guys need that. Anyways, if you're a little bit fluffier to start with, let's say you're the skinny fat guy, right? You're like 5'7", 160. You're better off just trying to gain like 1 to 2 pounds a week at the start, right? So adding weight to the bar, gaining 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's going to keep your rate of progress reasonable. And then you're probably going to want to wind up around the same sort of body weight. So also, to piggyback off of my nutrition video, right? Remember when I said there's like body dysmorphia? Like no one sees the things that you see in your own body. If you're that guy, the skinny fat guy, and you're 160, and you go from 160 to 180 in your training, like you're not even going to notice a difference. And I mean, you might, but like nobody else around you is going to like notice a difference if you're training. Because if you're just putting on muscular body weight, even if it's like, half muscle, half fat, which is pretty realistic at the start, but you're not going to look that much different. So you'd be surprised. A lot of guys are afraid to gain weight if they're a little fluffy already. Like you're not even going to notice the difference. So just go ahead and get on that train, gain some weight. And then as you progress into the early intermediate phase, your rate of weight gain is going to slow down naturally, especially if you're the skinny guy. If you're the skinny guy to start with, you're probably never going to have to worry about eating too much, and you're probably always just going to be working against that, trying to eat enough. And then if you're the skinny fat guy, then depending on how much weight you're gaining, you may want to slow things down at the intermediate phase. Maybe like, make sure you're not gaining more than a pound a week. Yeah, but that's a good place to start with. The problem that a lot of those guys fall into at the beginning is that they watch these YouTube videos where there's these guys that cite a bunch of papers and like all that stuff is, fine and dandy, and they'll tell you like the optimal caloric surplus is 200 to 300 calories a day, and you're just going to put on pure muscle if you do that. And like in theory, they may be completely correct. Like if you can actually feasibly hit a 200 to 300 calorie surplus every single day, and you're hitting that nonstop right on the dot, then maybe you will just gain a ton of muscle and very little body fat. It's impossible to not gain any body fat. I should also add that in. Whenever you're gaining weight, you're going to gain some body fat, but you want to skew it towards muscle with training, which we'll talk about in the training section. But yeah, so eating a 200 to 300 calorie surplus for a novice lifter is entirely unfeasible. It's just entirely impractical. Don't even try it. Not a good idea, right? Just try to gain 1 to 2 pounds a week. Half pound is not enough at the start. You're going to need more weight gain. And then the small fine adjustments come into play later for the advanced guy, right? Okay. So, I'll finish up the novice guy first. So, like I was saying, thousands of ways to gain weight. You can eat the giant calorie dense shake. You can eat pizza. You can eat burgers. If you're the super skinny guy, you're probably not going to get there with whole foods. Every now and then there's guys that can just eat like, a ton of white rice, ton of milk, and like that gets them there, and that's great. That's preferable, obviously. But if you have to turn to junk food, then that's what you got to do. If you're the skinny fat guy, you're going to want to stay away from the junk food from the get-go. You just need more whole foods. You can get there by eating in a surplus from protein, which is the next point, right? Your protein still needs to stay high. I copied and pasted this whole template from the cutting video, by the way, because it's really all the same principles in reverse. A couple things are different here and there, but protein's got to stay high. That's the most important macro for recovery. So if you're, let's say you're shooting for 180 pounds of body weight and you weigh 130, start eating 180 grams of protein. as soon as you possibly can. If you're used to eating like 60 grams a day, you're probably gonna have to start at like 100 grams a day for the first week, and then maybe the next week you try 130 or 40, and then after that you try 150 or 60, and then eventually you get to 180. And then eventually, as you get closer to the 180 body weight, then you have to bump your protein up to 200, so on and so forth. So your protein's got to increase as you get closer to that body weight goal. If you're going to push further body weight goals, and then I also in the cutting video I recommended like just having more closer on erring on the side of like a 1.1 grams of protein per body weight intake. So that's going to help you recover. And that's the same for skinny fat, super skinny. Like they should be eating pretty much the same amount of protein, right? Lots of protein. More is better generally. Stick with that. How much of a calorie surplus? Wait, so I talked about the skinny guy, talked about the skinny fat guy. Right, okay, so I went through that. For the advanced guy, that's the other one. All right. How much of a calorie surplus and how much weight gain for the advanced guy? So calorie surplus applies a lot more to the advanced guy because he's been training for a while, he's been tracking his nutrition, he knows how much he's eating a day, he knows how many calories, like any given number, is going to cause him to either gain or lose weight, right? So he has a base to work with. So that guy can make more fine adjustments. Maybe he can pull off a 200, 300 calorie surplus, which he should. And I don't recommend going lower than 300 generally, because you usually just don't tend to see anything happen. Like you may as well just stay at maintenance at that point. But so a guy that's, relatively advanced, he's not adding weight to the bar every week or every workout like a novice is, right? The reason a novice can eat so much and gain muscular body weight and not just slap on tons of fat is because they're adding weight to the bar very frequently. So they are packing on plenty of lean tissue in the process, right? The advanced guy is only adding weight to the bar like once a month. So with his calorie surplus, if he starts gaining a pound a week, adding weight to the bar once a month, he's going to be gaining more fat than muscle, which is not desirable, right? So that guy's got to take it a lot slower. This is where like the half pound a week recommendation comes in. And at this phase, you want to skew as much of the weight gain towards muscle as you can, but also if the scenario is like I described, like he's, getting so lean that he can't recover as well, then his main priority is just kind of like bumping up his body fat a little bit in the short term, right? And then if he just kind of goes back to what he was doing before, staying at that body weight, then he's eventually going to start recomping out of that as well. So it's kind of personal preference at that point. If let's say you're 15% body fat, you're not recovering as well, and you want to get to 18% body fat, and let's say that requires 5 pounds of fat gain, you can just go ahead and do it in like 2 weeks, and there may be negative health implications to that. It's less fun because it's very short term. You're just kind of stuffing yourself and then you stop. And that's also not going to be as beneficial for your recovery over a longer period of time. So the more you stretch it out, you're going to recover better between those individual workouts. You're going to put on more lean tissue in the process of going up that 5%. And I think it's more beneficial overall. So I think it's better to kind of spread that out a bit longer, right? As far as where you get the calorie surplus from, again, I think it should come from protein generally. By this point, there are some scenarios where, like, if you're eating tons of protein already, maybe you add in a little extra carbs for fuel. Maybe you just kind of add in some fats because you like to eat them. You have a lot more leeway at this point, right? Because everything's a lot more precise. Everything's a lot more dialed in. You've already put in all the work of getting strong in the first place. So, like, you're already strong at this point. You're just kind of milking extra gains, having fun with it. So your calorie surplus doesn't have to come from protein because you're already getting plenty of that. And as I kind of touched on in, I think, the nutrition video, the more advanced you get, I think you don't quite need to keep bumping your protein up as much, because since you're not building as much lean tissue on a regular basis, a lot of it is, or you're not building as high of a percentage of lean tissue, I should say. You're still always constantly repairing, but you're not like packing on a bunch of new structural tissue once you're fairly advanced. So you don't need as high of a protein intake, but you still want at least like a gram per pound of body weight. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers the nutrition section of things. The training, right? Obviously very important. The core principles still apply. Your strength has to go up, right? Another core principle of bulking specifically that I touched on earlier is that when you're putting on any type of body weight, you're going to gain muscle and you're going to gain fat. Excuse me. And the training is basically the slider or the dial that kind of allows you to skew the body weight gain towards either more muscle or more fat. So if you just want to get really fat, right, by gaining body weight, let's say you gain 10 pounds over Or let's say like my earlier example, you gain 20 pounds in like 3 months, right? You're a skinny fat guy. So you gain 20 pounds in 3 months. If you do that just sitting on the couch, then you're going to gain mostly fat and like a tiny, tiny little bit of muscle, right? Because you actually, even by not doing anything, you're going to gain a small amount of muscle. So let's call it 90% fat, 10% muscle. If you train and you do that, it's going to be more the other direction. It's going to be closer to, realistically, probably more like 70-ish% muscle and like 30% fat, right? So you're going to put on body fat no matter what when you're gaining weight, but it is a net positive because you're gaining strength, you're gaining lean tissue, and it's a lot easier to lose fat after you've already gotten strong, right? It's a lot more difficult to teach yourself to go through the difficult process of, all these different factors that involve in strength training that we all know so well. Like you have to learn the skill of doing each lift, the technique that's involved. You have to learn the skill of grinding through heavy weights. You have to learn how to eat to recover, develop all those habits. So like once you've already developed all those habits and laid the groundwork, it's pretty easy to just be like, all right, now I'm going to eat a little bit less and kind of shed this body fat that I put on. And it's like I said in the cutting video. So if you're watching this before that one, even if you're watching it after it, you can kind of watch the cutting video again, or just kind of go to the cutting video if you haven't seen it yet. And then one of the things I say there is that you should still be able to continue getting stronger while you're cutting, as long as you're not like super duper advanced yet. And that's just because, what was I saying? Kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, the extra body fat that you've accumulated through getting strong during the NLP, during the early phases, is going to help fuel your recovery while you're cutting, right? But yeah, so recovery is enhanced during a calorie surplus, weight gain, bulking, all that, right? So your food is higher, your recovery is higher. So that means that essentially each phase of your training, as I'll highlight right here, or whichever phase you're in when you start a calorie surplus, is going to get prolonged. So if you are starting out as a novice and you're adding weight to the bar 3 times a week, 5 pounds a workout, every single workout, getting strong, right? If you do that and you eat in a calorie deficit, not advisable, right? But let's say you start off, you're a healthy young guy, 5'7", 160. Your first squat workout is 105 for 3 sets of 5, right? And then you add weight to the bar 3 times that week, so then you're at like 120 the next week. 3 more times, get to 135, and you're in a calorie deficit. So you get to like 140, and then you fail the last rep of the last set. So you made it like 2 weeks and a day through the first phase of the NLP, right? Not advisable. So you want that to last as long as possible, and the weight gain is the single best way to do that, all right? So let's say you're in a calorie surplus while you're doing that. You're gaining a pound or 2 a week, like I suggested. What's going to happen is that phase is going to last for maybe 6 weeks instead of just 2. Somewhere between like 4 to 6 weeks for most guys that are, pretty average and starting from that point, right? So if you start at 105 and then you added 5 pounds 3 times a week for 4 weeks, right? Let's say you're on the low end, that's still 60 pounds. So your squat is about 165 now, right? So it should be probably further ahead than that, but that's just like, throwing some numbers out there, right? You can see the difference. So instead of stalling at 140, you're stalling at 165, 170. And it's probably going to be later than that, realistically. Most guys are probably not going to have to make a change if they're eating to recover until around at least like the 200-pound mark. So yeah, prolongs each phase of your training. Same thing with the early intermediate phase, right? If you cap out your NLP, you go through advanced novice phase, and then you wind up on your once weekly running it out, and you're at like 250 on your squat, and you're still gaining weight, then you're going to wind up, well beyond 315, somewhere into the low mid threes. If you don't keep eating enough, then you're probably going to stall out and cap out closer to the high twos, around 300, something like that. So obviously you can see why it's advisable to keep eating and prolong this fast progress. It's the difference of like adding, if you were to just, not eat enough the whole way through versus eat enough the whole way through novice through early intermediate, it's a difference of like at least 100 pounds on your squat, which is pretty significant, right? So you want to do that. And then right here, comparable to steroids, clickbait title. So when you're bulking, right, this is really, as a natural lifter, no drugs involved, this is probably the single greatest enhancer of strength gain that you can possibly employ, right? So assuming that you're training properly, even if you're not, honestly, but assume that you're training properly and you're doing most everything else right. You know, you're sleeping a reasonable amount. Everything else is like most of the way there, and you're not severely lacking in any single category. Just all of a sudden gaining weight, especially if you haven't done it before, is gonna like cause you to make leaps and bounds in your training, and you're gonna put on a ton of good muscle mass. You're gonna put on a ton of strength in a very short period of time, and it's gonna enhance your performance in a way that nothing else really can, aside from taking drugs, as I have highlighted right here, right? So don't take drugs. I don't advise it. Get your diet in order, and you'll have a similar effect. It's really profound, right? Very helpful. All right, but that's basically everything I wanted to cover in this video. The next video is going to be geared towards the skinny fat lifter in particular. So that's something that I have had a ton of experience with myself, something where I started from. I see a lot of guys that start that way, and I also think there's a big like just void in the online space about what to do with these guys. You know, there's tons of stuff about like if you're a really skinny guy, eat a ton of food, and like basically all the advice that applies to the really skinny guy does not apply as well to the skinny fat guy, except for the training get stronger part. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a video very comprehensive of like the entire timeline of a skinny fat lifter. It's gonna be from untrained all the way through to your advanced phase, all the way up the curve. It's gonna be like an epic novel, right? All the peaks and the climax along the way, and the different trials and tribulations you'll go through, that sort of thing. But yeah, if you guys like the video, say something in the comments. Ask me questions about this if you have any. Happy to help. But yeah, see you guys later. Enjoy the beautiful day.